Sure. Thanks, Subhash. Am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, guys,
Oh,
thanks a lot.
just one thing. Sorry, Jagjit, to cut you off. If anyone has a question, please use the Q&A menu available. Just type in your question, and Jagjit will get to you as soon as he takes a break or during in between. Sorry, Jagjit. Please go ahead.
No worries, Subhash. Hi, all. Thanks a lot for joining and showing interest in hearing about LA County and what we are doing on the ground and how we are using data in various initiatives which are going on right now, as well as in general. So let me quickly introduce myself. Myself, Jagjit Thaliwal. I'm a Deputy CIO overseeing the public safety and health departments from the Office of CIO within the county. So my primary responsibilities is overseeing the IT strategies for these departments and assist these departments with modernization and new technology adoptions. So I'm kind of new to the public sector, so it's been 2 years since I've joined the county, and I've been fascinated with the journey which I'm going through right now. Coming from the private sector, it's a different culture and different learning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch upon LA County in general, and then I'll touch upon our data vision and some of the key pillars which is helping us achieve this data strategy. And I'll take few examples where actually we are leveraging this data in making our decisions and improving a service delivery for our residents. There are so many examples I could take, and let's see based on how much time I'll have in the end, and I'll try to cover some of these examples. So with that, so when actually I joined LA County 2 years back, I at that time I didn't know a lot of fascinating facts about the LA County as a region itself. And since then, I've been learning and getting to know about LA County, and it's a pretty unique and special when it comes to all the counties in US, especially because of the size, population, and diversity. And I thought I'll share some of the interesting facts. I don't know if everyone knows about it. Hopefully, you'll find some of these facts pretty interesting. So when we look at a population, LA County is the most populous county in US, serving about 10.3 million people. And if I consider LA County as a state, will be eighth largest state behind Ohio and ahead of Michigan. And when it comes to the economy, we are $700 billion GDP economy. And it's the third largest metropolitan economy of the world. And if I assume LA County as a country, it will be a 19th largest economy in the world, ahead of Argentina, Taiwan, Sweden, and Switzerland, to name few countries. And when we look at the size, we are roughly about 4,700 square miles area, which can easily have Delaware and Rhodes Island within these borders. So hopefully that will give you a good perspective of the physical size of it and the kind of population which we are serving. And we have like 1/4 of the California population within the LA County region. Uh, Other interesting fact which is close to my heart, especially coming from outside US, that this is the most ethnically diverse county of US. So we speak about 224 languages, and we have people from different backgrounds and different cultures. So which is a bigger strength of the LA region itself. That brings in different perspectives and different expertise when we are trying to solve business, social, and economic issues. Then in terms of the number of cities, LA County has 88 cities with 65% of our region as unincorporated. And some of these cities you might be hearing like Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, the city of LA itself, Burbank, and so on. The last one is a pretty interesting fact. If I tell you that LA County is a #1 creative capital of US, that may not be a surprise looking at Hollywood and the different studios we have. And even if I say that we are #1 fashion apparel industry, that may not be a surprise. But if I say that we are the #1 manufacturing capital of the nation, so LA County actually provides employment to 350,000 people in a manufacturing industry. And we make things from a small needle goes to the helicopter and aerospace things. So that's the beauty of LA region, that it's so diverse, even from an industry and economy perspective. And there are at least 6 to 7 industry segments in which we are leading in different shape and form. So talk about the tourism, the tourist industry, trade and logistics industry, the aerospace because of JPL, Aero Corporation, now with SpaceX, auto industry with Tesla being here, uh, studios and media and entertainment, we already know, the financial capital of West Coast. So all these industries brings in a different economic aspect and brings in a different opportunities as well as its own interesting challenges to it. And when I look at LA County as an organization or a company, so we are like roughly about 100,000 people who are providing services to our residents. And it's with that number, it's the largest employer in the 5 county region of SoCal. And our rough budget is roughly about 32 to $35 billion budget, with primary revenue coming from a property tax and sales tax, and then state and government federal grants. And there are about 40 different departments which provide all these services. So if I look from a resident's perspective, we actually divide all these services into 5 different clusters. So we have health cluster, which is providing our personal health, public health, and mental health. Then we have public safety, where our policing, sheriff, fire, probation, and the courts and the justice communities comes into picture. Operations, that may be one of your favorite because that's where the tax collection happens. You guys pay property tax and sales tax. That's the revenue source for us. And that cluster also consists of register recorder, coroner's office. That's where we have our vital records, birth and death records, as well as a voting system. Then children and family services for our child support, workforce development, military and veteran affairs. And last but not least, the community and municipal services. That's where we have library, parks, and all, regional planning and all that infrastructure services. So that's the kind of a very, very high level view of the kind of services we provide to our residents. And when I say LA County as a data-driven organization, so what exactly a data-driven organization mean for, for any company or any organization? To me, I feel that it's the most important thing for data-driven organization is its data strategy, how they are making decisions on the ground for providing the services, and how data is influencing those decisions. That comes as a part of that data strategy. But that strategy doesn't exist in silo. So it always starts with the business strategy of the organization. So first we need to define the business strategic goals. And then we have to stand up the technology, the IT strategy, and the data strategy to implement and achieve those business strategic goals. And in order to achieve that business strategy, you need to have a certain key pillars, which can vary for each organization depending upon the maturity of the organization. So on a scale of 1 to 5, we are not at number 5 yet, but still we are making a lot of good progress in certain areas. And there are priorities for us. For LA County, I would say the 3 pillars which we are tracking to achieve our strategy is the platform, the data platforms itself. That the second is the data governance, which is a very key component enabling the data sharing as well as the transparency to the public. And the last but the most important is a data-driven culture itself. Having a culture of data-driven aspects on the ground from the employees as well as your leadership. That's the most important thing which drives this data-driven organization behavior. Because even if you have a very robust data platforms, you can make your technology upgrades. But if your leadership is not talking the data language, all that technology effort is futile. So it all starts with the people on the ground, which actually can cultivate that data culture. And once you have these strategies in place, then an organization can make informed decisions and which can help improve the services which you are offering to the clients, which are residents in our case. And that's actually the purpose of existence for any local government, be it a city or a county, how to provide the better services to our residents. So in the rest of the presentation, I'm going to actually drill down into each of these blocks. So let's start with the data strategy. As I said, it's linked to the business strategy of the organization. So what is LA County business strategy? So we do have a 5-year strategic plan, which revolves around 3 critical goals. The first one is specifically focusing on transforming the lives of our residents, where we focus on how to do the prevention initiatives, how to do the comprehensive interventions, especially how to enable the justice system and provide the service delivery around those aspects. The second goal is specifically focus on the vibrant and resilient communities, in which we drive the economic and workforce development, then the wellness of our communities and the environmental sustainability aspect on a daily basis. Third one is more related to the IT functions, that how we can enable the digital government itself, how we can modernize our systems, how we can bring operational efficiencies, fiscal responsibilities, and engage with our customers, communities, and different partners. And all these goals, business goals, require a technology and the digital transformation on the ground to make it happen. And that's where the technology, the IT strategy, and the business strategy goes hand in hand. And each of these goals have a different objectives and strategies defined underneath. And thought of sharing a couple of examples, as you can see that how data and technology is deeply integrated into each and every goal. And it is all about that how we can enhance our IT platforms to securely share and exchange the data so that our leadership can make the right decisions for the public and the residents. So drilling down from business strategy to IT strategy. So we have a 5 IT strategic goals, which is more of a North Star for us when we have to perform any IT actions on the ground. And one of them is a data as a utility, which is I'm closely involved in that. So that actually helps us enable the use and accessibility of data to build that culture which I talked about and emphasize the data-driven decision making. And that goes hand in hand with digital civic engagement, because we have to think from a resident's perspective and enable our employees through the workforce empowerment. And then we have to transform our procurement processes to enable these data platforms and other decisions in the faster fashion. Then drilling down further, the data as a utility vision. So what exactly is this vision for us, and how is our landscape looks like? So as I mentioned, we have 40 plus departments right now. And why it is so complex for us is, think of these departments as independent companies itself. And it's not because of lack of collaboration. It is because of the way the local government works, and it is bounded by the different compliance regulations and the legislation rules. All these departments provide different set of services, and they are bounded by their own legislations. So sharing a data between these departments is not as easy task, is not as easy as just enabling a technology behind it. It is more of a legal process to enable that sharing. So that actually is the premises of our data vision. So we do have data sources at the department level. Subhash, I'm not sure. Are you able to see my mouse? I'm just trying to point at a few blocks.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I see 2 laser points, so I mean that's a more.
Okay. So we have our data sources, and then at each department level, we have their warehouse and composition of data lakes. And whenever the cross-departmental or a county-wide data needs comes in, and that's where the county-wide enterprise data platforms comes into picture. And then we deal with a lot of external data, be it from the state, national, as well as external associations like LASA and any other third-party association where we feed the data. All these data sources then eventually feed into the open data, which is a public endpoint. How public is consuming that data, be it in terms of receiving and or be it in terms of then using that and then taking it further for digestion and analytics and maybe performing other actions in their organization. And This is the kind of the landscape which we have on the ground. And in terms of the vision and the objectives, so we have a 5-step process which we are trying to achieve in this vision. The very first step process is a data inventory itself. How we can have a standardization across the common terms and the common definitions of it. Um, for example, like homelessness or recidivism, or even for the matter of fact, I will take a very simple example of gender. A different applications may treat a gender value differently. Some may have a drop down, some may have a text, and some may have different values to it. How we can standardize the definitions for it and the potential values for it, that can help us, because once we standardize it, it helps us then achieve the goal of the sharing, and that improves the data quality. So that's why that's our first goal, that at the department level, we want to make sure that we have a data quality and the common definitions which can be used across different departments. And then we still have a lot of legacy platforms, which we are in a process of upgrading. And we are very, very cloud savvy and moving all our platforms to cloud-based and the SaaS-based solutions. We already have actually moved to various public clouds, the gov clouds, which are available, as well as we are a big advocate of leveraging SaaS platforms on the ground. And when it comes to the cross-departmental needs, that's where the data sharing and governance comes into picture. And as I mentioned, that these departments are so silo in nature because of the legislations. So different legislation come into picture. Like, let's say if I have a health departments, they may be constrained by the HIPAA laws. Justice departments may be controlled by the CJIS FBI rules. Child and family services may be controlled by the WIC laws, the Women, Infant and Children Services, and so on. And then there are PII laws. So especially when it comes to the PII data, the laws are very strict, but it's a little bit relaxed when it comes to anonymized data. And then once we have that, then enabling the open data for the public, leveraging a civic engagement. And that goes back to more of a resident's view or a self-service view rather than the government-centric view. Because from a resident perspective, whether they are consuming a one service or a n number of services, that's still the one identity. And how we can change our mindset and start looking from residents' perspective, that's the digital civic engagement which we are trying to achieve. And while we are working on all this, we continue to acknowledge and appreciate the fact that the future of data keeps on changing. That's, earlier we used to get the manual data from different applications, but as we use more of AI ML solutions, we start getting a lot of machine-based data. IoT solutions are in place. We're already adapting various IoT solutions on the ground. And that's bringing a very, very different aspects of data sets. And when we are implementing our new data platforms, how they can ensure that they are scalable enough to manage the future needs of IoT solutions. So we keep that in mind as a part of our future of data objective. So these are the 5 objectives which helps us drive our data strategy at the department as well as at a county level. So now let's drill down further into data platforms itself. So even though we have a 40 departments, so we don't try to dictate a particular technology solution or a product at each department, because each department may have a very specific need and maybe having a different complexity of data. Maybe a different technology solution might fit well to their needs. So while we are not enforcing a one product across the county, but what we are enforcing or motivating all departments to go through is a common reference architecture. And that's a big deal for us because we are talking about integrating different platforms. And unless we are following a common enterprise architecture, it's very difficult for us to achieve those integrations. So that's one thing which we drive from top to bottom, that how we can have a common reference architecture which can support the data strategy which we have envisioned for the county. And our reference architecture is not complex. I would say it's a very industry standard architecture, but the most important point is about the consistency. So at the department level, we, similar to any other organization, we have a structured and unstructured data. which feeds into a data integration layer. That's where we perform our ETL operations. Then we have a service hub. That's where our API management tools comes into picture, which helps us connect to the different business applications. And that feeds into the data hosting layer. That's where the data curation and the landing happens. And we separate out the operational stores as well as the analytic data. And this actually feeds into the master data management, because that's a very important component for us at a county level, because we are able to link the identities from a different departments through the master data. And that enables the self-service view, which I briefly mentioned earlier. And then this data hosting also then eventually feeds into analytics layer, which is our analytics hub. That's where our data science, predictive analytics, our operational analytics, as well as typical operational metrics, visualization reports, which our resident sees. So it comes from that. And then it also feeds into our business applications. So this is how typically a department specific view or the county view looks like from the data architecture perspective. But in order to ensure that this happens on the ground, on the top is the data governance, and that plays a big role, especially when you have to collaborate across 40 different departments. So data governance have to be very robust to ensure that the data quality, security, privacy, and compliance rules are happening across the board. And this is probably the most technical I'll go in my presentation. Not sure what audience, how technical or business savvy we are, but I will not go too deep into it, but just to give you a perspective that these are the commonalities which we bring onto the table. I talked about the master data because that's an important component. So drilling down further, that how cross-departmental needs, how do we manage these cross-departmental needs? So I may have a justice data, I may have a health data, and they may be tracking the client information in the different ways, and how I'm bringing that together into our master data management, which is our information hub. And by implementing that, we were able to link 20 million residents, which is a 10-year cross data from 2010 onwards, which includes all the inflow and outflow within the county, as well as the death and birth. So we were able to link those 20 million records using the mass MDM solution. And how it is helpful is it brings a different insights for our business leaders. So just to give a perspective, we were able to identify that out of that 20 million clients, 1.3 million clients have touched the justice system at certain point of time. Out of that, 10% of people actually have a history of homelessness. 8% of people are suffering from mental illness. And imagine the power of these insights as a business leader. If you are working on a homelessness social services, you can easily make a right decisions about prioritization, what services you need to focus on if you really have to handle the homelessness situation. And that's the power of the data, which on the ground, which we leverage to make those strategic decisions and prioritize our services. Because end of the day, we have a limited funds. So we need to prioritize which services we should enhance and which services we should deprioritize to make best use of the tax dollars. Another example I could give in the cross-departmental situation is a health. So our Department of Health Services, which is the second largest health system in US after New York. So we have 4 public hospitals, 20 plus clinics and different urgent cares. And then they have to connect with 300 plus other health systems in our region. And we have a lane system, which is LA Network of Enhanced Services, which is a health information exchange between these systems, which connects the EMR, electronic medical records of all these health systems within the LA region. And there are about 300 plus systems which are already onboarded to it. And that helps us achieve the coordinated care for our patients, and which utilizes the interoperability and aggregation of the patient data. And it helps us improve the care management and clinical outcomes and the business operations of our health services. I can keep giving a lot of examples, like few of other examples could be electronic permitting and inspection. So let's say if I have to open a new restaurant business and I apply for the permit, but behind the scene, you may need to get the health permit from public health, you may need to get the building permit from fire department, a zoning permit from regional planning, public works will give you a utilities permit, then you have a tax collector for business permit. So how behind the scene we try to make that complex process seamless through these cross-departmental initiatives. Similarly, the justice-based JAME system that interconnect the Justice Department data, and then the homelessness information portal that actually enables the connection of homelessness data with other set of services, and so on. Just to give the perspective that these are the kind of cross-departmental solutions exist as a part of our platforms, which helps us connect the data across different departments. Moving on to the second tower, the governance and transparency. So I feel that data platform is still comparatively easy because that's a technology function. But when we move to the governance and transparency, that's where the process and the people aspect comes into picture. And as I explained, that each department is controlled by their legislation, and it's a multitude of hurdles which we have to go through when we have to establish this governance and transparency process. So data sharing is the most important element in that governance and transparency. And if we have private sector people in the audience, I don't know if they may be able to appreciate that challenge. Because if I talk to the studio guy and say that if I have to link the home entertainment data with TV or theatrical data, it may take 6 to 12 months to do the legal process to do it. I mean, that person will be really shocked that really like it's a part of a same organization. But unfortunately in public sector, it doesn't work that way. We have to go through those regulatory compliance to ensure that we are complying, and all the data sharing is very, very use case specific. And it's a legal process which takes more time. So as a part of data sharing initiative, what we are doing is we have started developing a data sharing handbooks by proactively identifying the use cases where we have to interconnect the data sharing needs. And we have started getting proactively involving our legal and finalizing those handbooks upfront, so that as and when the application needs comes in, it's just the technology enablement components. This is one of a screenshot from one of our handbook. I don't know how visible it is, but just to give you a complexity. This is actually a screenshot from our homelessness case. Let's say if a law enforcement officer is dealing with the individual in the custody, if the individual is already in the custody, then the access to a data set will be different with respect to when the individual is not in the custody. And similarly, if the employee is a health services employee versus working in another department, then their rights to access data will be very different. So those kind of use cases and the scenario-based approvals, we try to get approved upfront with the help of legal as well as the legislation, so that we can have a handbook, and as we are developing our platforms and other solutions, we can easily enable those technology decisions. Hopefully it will give you a little bit of sense of the challenges across the sharing aspect. Another aspect of data sharing is the PRAs, which is Public Records Act. So by law, government records are accessible by the public upon request, unless otherwise exempted by the law. So every year we receive thousands and thousands of PRA requests, which we fulfill. Like this, last year we received about 25,000 requests. And this number keeps on increasing, especially with more updates to the legislation like Senate Bill 1421, which was specifically talking about use of force by the law enforcement officers, sexual assault, and the act of dishonesty. So those set of information is available to the public on request. Then AB 748, that's a law specifically to audio and video recordings of the critical incidents. It could be the body worn camera videos. So that can be made available to the public on request. So as these new laws are coming in, the number of PRA requests keeps on increasing, and we need to ensure that our systems are capable enough to handle that PRA request. And this year, I'm expecting that at least there's going to be a 30% surge because of COVID and public unrest. Another aspect of public data sharing and transparency is open data, which is a little bit different from PRA. PRA is more of reactive approach where people reach out to us and we share the data. And open data is when we see the trend and when we know that, okay, this is the commonly used data, and then we proactively expose that data sets on our portal. So like any other county and city, we do have our open data portal where we have about 400 plus data sets, which consist of about 210 million records and about 60 plus different user stories based on the business context. And that's available to the public. And there are a lot of hits comes onto that. Uh, it's pleased to see that the top search term on our open data portal is sustainability, which gives me a good feeling that it means our entrepreneurs and our informed citizens, they are actually conscious about the sustainability and they may be making a lot of efforts using that data to improve things further. But this is an area which we are continuing to improve. And in fact, one of the initiatives which I'm closely involved is Open Data 2.0. Because one challenge which we see with the current exposed data sets, we are leaving up to the consumer to figure out what this data set is and how to consume that data set. But what we want to aspire to do is how we can provide more visualization and the business context to this data set. How we can make it more real time. If not real time, can it be a near real time rather than the 1 year, 2 year old data? And how we can provide the ability to compare and parse the data sets for additional thoughts. And how we can make it easy for the non-technical end users. Why do we expect our end users to be tech savvy and know the analytics tools and programming languages to parse it? How we can bridge the gap and reduce that digital inequalities between the different set of users. So those are the key premises based on which we are embarking our journey of Open Data 2.0. And this is a perfect example where public can participate and help us in that. Actually, in the couple of months, we potentially will launch the survey where public can actually give the feedback that what data set makes more sense and how we can improve this service. Another aspect of data transparency, since COVID is the most discussed topic in today's world, how we are using data in the COVID-19 situation to make a critical decisions and how we are transparent in terms of informing our decisions and the data which we collect. So before I talk about the data, I thought it might be of interest to little bit touch upon how we typically deal with situations like COVID-19. And since we are conglomeration of 88 cities, and when it comes to the natural disasters like fire, earthquake, or epidemic situations, it's the county which has a wholesale responsibility because it's a regional emergency. And that's where county takes a charge and work with all the cities and respond to the emergency situation and recover from it. So similarly, that's what is happening in COVID-19. So our public health department, they are the one who are responsible for preparedness and then responding to this and coming up with recovery path for it. So based on the level of epidemic situation, they have a different continuity plans, business continuity plans, as well as a different strategies. Like in case of COVID, there are 10 to 15 different strategies which they have to invoke as a part of preparedness. So be it which includes maybe infection control, your laboratory procedures, surging your staffing needs, healthcare work safety, PPE needs, mental health, patient transportation, facility management, environmental services, patient care, decontamination, waste management, all these aspects we have to think through end to end to control these epidemic situations. And when it comes to the continuity of operations, while most of the staff may be remote and may not be working from the offices, that's where the technology plays a significant role. Within a matter of weeks, we were actually able to enable the remote working for 50,000 plus county employees and then setting up the emergency operation centers for them. And then as a part of response, setting up the testing strategy, enabling the testing sites, then enabling a different processes and the use cases, especially like contact tracing and then treatment. And then even for the family services, people may be struggling from a utility bills or property tax. how to come up with different interventions to help our residents. And lastly, now we are on the recovery path. How do we define the recovery phase? So it's a four-step process for us. And what are the exit criteria for it? What metrics we track? And that's where data plays a significant role. And once we achieve the target of those metrics, we move on to the next stage of recovery. So I'll touch a little bit about that in subsequent slide. So this is a four-step process which we managed to deal with the epidemic. And once we have that strategy in place, that's when we start measuring it. What are the different operational metrics which we need to track, be it our testing, case count, hospitals or PPE data, hospital beds, ventilators, ICUs. Another metrics could be around location, demographics, race, and ethnicity to ensure that there is no biasness in any of our actions and services. Then the third aspect could be to start tracking our 911 emergency calls, that how many of those calls are coming because of the COVID and how many of them are really emergency situations. That feeds into our EMS and our health services emergency needs. Then the fourth and important one is the GIS, the geographical information services data, and the dashboards around it. Where are the testing sites located? Where are the free Wi-Fi internet spots are available where people can use the county applications? The food shelters, elder nutrition shelters, isolation locations, the student meals locations, and so on. So all these dashboards which we make available to our residents so that they can use these services in the seamless manner. Another aspect of data which plays a significant role in COVID is predictive models. And that's where we use statistical and epidemic models to predict the daily patient infection rate, mortality rate, and our hospital demand in future, how many beds and ICU beds, ventilators we may need in future. And even the effect of behavior to control the transmission. When a health officer or the leadership or board are making decisions about flattening the curve or effect of social distancing, all those are statistical models behind the scene, influenced by the strong data elements. And that's where we collaborate with UCLA, USC, and other private partners to make these complex epidemic models, which helps us make the right decisions for our residents. So on the ground, thought of giving some of the examples of kind of trends which we track, which are data-driven trends. So one of the interesting trend which I saw on 20th of June, the very first weekend when we reopened the county bars and the restaurants, 500,000 people actually hit the nightlife spots on the first weekend on 6/20. So as you can imagine, what impact this would have caused. So we got 40% increase in the cases among 18 to 40-year-old and 27% increase in our daily hospitalization. The percentage who has a close contact with person they don't live with, that got increased by 36%. So once you have these kind of insights, you can imagine that how the health services and the board leadership makes a decision about flattening the curve or replanning their reopening strategies once they have access to this kind of trends analysis. And then in terms of the metrics I talked about, there are at least 20 metrics which we are tracking on the ground today, which varies in 5 different areas, from hospitalization, testing, contact tracing, deaths, and PPE. And these metrics we track, and as and when we achieve the target, we move to the next stage of our reopening strategy, which is a 4-phase process which we are working on. Then quickly moving into the last tower about the data-driven culture. And why it is so important is because this is a mindset shift. It's about that coming from the closed mindset of not sharing a data to the mindset of this data is available to share, and we actually can achieve a lot by sharing, and we can improve our services. And that's a cultural shift that comes at employee level, that comes at a leadership level. And that's the people aspect of it. And what we do on the ground is we have to enable that career development plans for all our employees. Then we need to ensure that we help our departments assessing their maturity level from data perspective, what maturity level they have, and help them with the roadmap which they need to achieve the next maturity level, and then start feeding into that data culture in all their conversations, data literacy programs, training programs, the lunch and learn, and different hackathon kind of activities which we do on ground, just to enable that culture. And another important thing is the classifications. Maybe the private sector audience may not understand, but classifications is a big challenge when it comes to hiring an individual. I cannot go in the market and just hire the data scientist as it is, unless there is a defined classification in the government jobs. And that process takes months and months. And that is why the hiring process is so slow, because classifications takes a lot of time. And unless we are proactively working based on the future industry needs and redefining our classifications, we will be always behind. And proud to say that within LA County, we actually already worked upon these data roles, be it a data scientist, chief data officer, data analyst, and data engineers. We defined those classifications, so at least we can hire the right talent from the market based on our data needs. And then even integrating it with the right data associations, because they bring the outside perspective. They work with the private sector, they work with corporations. So that is a prime reason that I'm so actively involved in DataCon LA, Data for Good, and UCLA and USC data initiatives, and our county own Data and Donuts and Women in Data Science. Those are some of the associations and initiatives which we have in place specifically to just instill that culture and just keep on bringing the aspect of data in our day-to-day conversations. So those are the three towers which helps us achieve the strategy. So before I jump on to some of the examples, I'm not sure, Subhash, this may be the right point. If there is any question, happy to take it. Otherwise, I'll just share a few more examples where actually we have made right decisions using these towers and a strategy which I defined.
I don't see any questions. If anyone has a question, please use the Q&A button, but we'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. And if not, then we can get started. So Jagji, just give them a minute or so and let them, if anyone has a question, to post.
Or since I have 50 minutes left, so I don't see any question, but yeah, let me continue. If there is anything, I'll just take a pause.
Okay, sounds good.
Uh, so when it comes to now, how do we actually improve the service delivery? And every department and every initiative, I mean, it's an endless list. But at least I wanted to give you a context that why public sector initiatives are so complex, and behind the scene, what goes on, and how we actually use these data sets to make our right decisions. So starting with homelessness, that's the one of the strategic social issue which we deal in LA, and people who live in LA, we all know that that's the biggest social problem which we are facing. Using our Measure H funds, we are spending almost $400 million a year to combat this problem, and we are the, unfortunately, you don't want to rank higher in this, but unfortunately we are the top, one of the top homelessness situation in the nation. So since we know that prevention is always better than cure, if the person is homeless, bringing that person out of homelessness situation is way complex and costly as compared to preventing it. And that is why a lot of focus and attention goes on how we can predict that homelessness and how we can prevent it. So one of the initiative which we worked with the Cal Policy Lab and University of Chicago Poverty Lab is actually to predict the homelessness across the single adults, individuals who are receiving the county services. And by using those data sets from the different department services, we were able to pinpoint that the individuals who are using the mental health and the criminal justice systems, they are the most vulnerable for homelessness. And the service utilization for these individuals starts spiking 6 months prior to their homelessness experience. And that's a good trigger point for the social service workers to start intervene right away. Because if you are seeing that there is a sudden spike, instead of one visit to the county offices, that person may be coming 6 times a month, that's a good red flag for county workers to start acting. And using this study, we were able to identify that if we effectively serve 1% of the county clients who are at a risk of new homelessness, we actually can prevent 7,000 homelessness spell in a year. And that's the big insight for us while we are using our homelessness fund, that how we should intervene and change those funds from the cure to the prevention side. And then now with COVID situation, the homelessness is becoming more severe. And then using the additional data sets of jobless reports, the COVID testing reports, payless payroll protection program, how many people actually have missed giving a property tax, and rent defaulters. That's the additional data set which we are trying to overlay on the existing data sets to identify how this problem will look like this year and potentially next year.
Hey, Jagjit, sorry, there's a lot of questions that are coming. I don't know if you want to wait till the end or take them now.
I'll quickly take a look. So there are some quick answers. John is asking county using a graph databases. Yes, short answer is yes. There are still, we have to increase the adoption, but yes, there are certain initiatives in which we have already started using. Wayne is asking about LACT Data Federation. So one of key focus for me and our office is to start partnering with the cities. So in fact, Jean, you must have heard her last month on LACT Data Federation. So we are closely integrated with City of LA as well as other cities when it comes to the data initiative. In fact, just before this call, we had our monthly meeting with LACT, where we talked about the open data and how we can start integrating other data services. Uh, she talked about the hackathon which we did last month, which was a joint effort where the county people also participated and acted as a judge in that hackathon. Sanjeev is asking how successful has been county in implementing some of the strategies across the department. We understand. So it's a pretty broad question, Sanjeev. Yes, I would say yes, we have been successful, but again, it's a journey. There is a lot of things which still needs to be done. But the good thing is uh, all these complex initiatives, when it comes from the top, and our board is very, very supportive of it. And I feel so proud that our board is actually data driven in all their ask and the board motions which we receive from them. That helps us enable and move the needle. Still a lot of things to be done, but yes, we are moving towards the right path and making the right decisions and implementing the right solutions. And fortunately, unfortunately, I know COVID is a situation which we don't want to get onto it, but it's the blessing in disguise from a technology perspective, because we were able to achieve so many initiatives in data and technology because of COVID, because now technology is a strategic function, especially when you cannot hire more people, you cannot use contractors, your budget is squeezed. So it's forcing all the business leaders to look for the alternates, and that's where technology and data is playing a big role. And that's the power I'm seeing, which is helping us achieve the things which earlier were taking a lot of time. And I'm really hoping that now through the forced pilots because of unavoidable situations, business leaders have start seeing the value of it and start seeing the ROI. Just to give an example, like I'm a big advocate of robotic process automation technology. It was moving pretty slow, but with COVID, because we came up with a lot of ad hoc processes, then these processes actually, now with RPA, we were able to achieve those things during COVID because there are no alternate solutions to it. I'll quickly, Dennis, I think that's my last slide. I'll touch upon some of the initiatives which we are working on. So I'll just take a pause. Subhash, if you can keep an eye on some of the question, I'll revisit that.
So, sounds good. Go ahead.
So moving on to next slide, I talked about our homelessness. Then we have a vulnerable population. By definition, these are the homeless people who are suffering from either mental health illness or the substance use disorders. So justice metric framework, which is an initiative which specifically target on vulnerable population, because if you see, this is a vicious cycle. If the person is homeless and he or she is suffering from mental health situation, they may have a criminal behavior and they may end up in an incarceration situation. And when they will release, since they may not have a job or a skill set or may not have a home, a likelihood of these people fall back to the homelessness is pretty high and then eventually do end up in the criminal justice situation. So this is a vicious cycle which keeps on going, and unless we intervene and provide the right services, it's very difficult to bring people out of this vulnerable situation. So data really helps a lot in making those decisions. So what we are doing using the data is how we can come up with the interventions, at what point we should intervene, and what should be our intervention, which can help us provide the right treatment and then put them on a recovery path. And it's actually a two questions. What should be the optimal treatment which we should give, which help them get out of the cycle? And what are the treatments which are not effective and which keeps on putting them back? Because it's about the right timing and the right service. And using all the data, using the data metrics framework, and the report actually will get published in a week or two, we were able to identify that if we do the high sustained engagement of mental health services within the first year of incarceration and then permanent housing within the 3 years, we actually can bring down the reconviction rate from 72% to 36%. And the months to reconvention offense actually goes from 8 months to 16 months. So that is a kind of insight and the power I'm talking from the data, that this helps make them analytical decisions rather than just economic or a broader, I would say, non-mathematical decisions. Other aspect of improving data services, it could be social services aspect, or maybe even at home, enabling a smart city or a community aspect of it. Uh, and then the environmental sustainability aspect, we have our sustainability plan, which consists of 12 different goals. And that's where data plays a significant role. How to track the current state, what are the indicators which we need to work upon, and are we really making a progress towards the target of these goals? And this is a very, very data-driven metrics which we have in place. Another example I could give is a Vision Zero program, which is our traffic fatalities and injuries. How do we use the data which come from our traffic injuries? So we collect the data from California Highway Patrol, hospitals, first responder reports, and different sources to combine and then identify which are the high density collision concentration corridors. How should we prioritize our infrastructure projects? And what are the key trends which are causing those accidents? Is it the specific mode of travel in that location? Are these blind spots? Or is it maybe a pedestrian situation, or maybe a specific age group? So all those patterns and behavior which we use, and our vision is to actually achieve the zero accidents by 2025 in at least in an unincorporated area which is controlled by the county. Uh, then moving on to a future of data. I talked about the IoT services, and that's already in place. There are various initiatives which we have implemented on a ground, which have started feeding in the IoT data, and how we need to ensure that our data platforms supports it. So be it a 4,000 county facilities, which is on the roadmap of a smart building. And then we have a smart park. We have a parking solutions, which actually we are working on making them a smart parking solution, especially across the 25 miles of our PCH beach and harbors area. And then we have our hospitals where we have a temperature, pressure, and bedside blood testing IoT devices in place. How to ensure that those devices are secure and integrate those devices data with our EMR and other systems. Then LA Found is another IoT-based application in which we are using a radio frequency to track the missing people, especially the residents who are facing Alzheimer's disease. Another marquee project which was done by the Department of Parks and Recreation was Angel Eye, which is a drowning detection system. By putting the IoT-based high-density cameras in our community pools, and based on the movement of the swimmer or the person who is using the pool, uh, and applying the video analytics on it, and based on the movement, these IoT devices can send the signals to the lifeguard who may not be paying attention to a specific individual. So that kind of future of data have started coming in, and our platforms have to make sure that they are adaptive to it and they are scalable enough to manage. Uh, Let me see. So I'm pretty much at the end of the slide, and then Dennis, you asked about the initiative. And as I said, it's not that we are maturity level 5, but yes, there are great progress we are making. And the most important thing is, yes, we have a vision and a strategy in place, which is helping us moving forward. And we are making progress in it. And various data initiatives, if I would give a very, very high level summary, data sharing handbook is one of the critical initiative. We just have a first use case completed for homelessness, but how we can identify other use case and keep those handbook updated for other use cases. Then I talked about the data inventory and the common data definitions, that more of a data quality control initiatives, and coming up with the standard definitions, which may not be standard across the county, but maybe across the nation and the other state and local agencies. Then we are right now in the process of kickstarting our API management solution to link the info hub with the different business applications and the services APIs. Another big initiative which we are on the verge of starting is Los Angeles County Community Information Exchange. And that goes back to connecting the different call centers and the different services which we have. I mean, currently, if you call a different departments, you probably have to call a different number. And you have a 311 services that may or may not be connected to all the department services. And how we can connect that services so that, again, thinking from a resident's perspective, so that they just have to worry about one number, and behind the scene, how we can enable the service and referrals to make that information exchange possible. And that requires the consent management, which is the next step. That once we have a universal consent from our residents, that what data to expose, how much we can expose, and how we can link their services, that will help us achieve that self-service portal vision for the residents. And then continue to instill this data-driven culture within our organization. And I specifically called out Open Data 2.0 because that's close to my heart. And I feel that this is something which all the audience folks actually can help a lot in this initiative. So we will be launching the different workshops as well as a surveys to get a feedback from you, and would really appreciate participation on Open Data 2.0. So that's pretty much the end of it, Subhash. Let's quickly go through the questions. I'm not sure, so where should I?
Just start from the top. The ones which you answered, I already marked them as answered.
Okay, so for the vendor, where are the coming opportunities to the business? So I kind of touched upon it. Business analysis, definitely. There are a lot of predictive modeling opportunities which is there, which can help us make decisions. System integrations, yes, the API management will be the big initiative on the ground. And cybersecurity, especially because of the COVID, the surge in cyber attacks is there. And within no time, we are already kind of finished our multi-factor authentication for our IAM solution. And we actually finished our penetration testing and assessment, and based on that, various recommendations came out, and now we are working on those recommendations. Those will be the cybersecurity projects which are going on right now. Is there an example of open data you discuss which can look into get the idea of what kind of data we can frequently? So Andreas is asking about the open data. So if Andreas, I'm assuming you're right, Andreas. I think you're from LASA. So Homelessness is a best example for the open data. So rather than just exposing the data set, which consists of the homelessness information, if we can involve the business context of it, and if we can actually give the whole story, that homelessness journey from start to end as a part of open data, that will help LASA as well as United Way and other agencies to collaborate and work together to achieve the best business value out of that data. And that's the open data 2.0 which we are referring here. And LASA plays a significant role when it comes to homelessness because they expose a lot of data. But if you look from a third party perspective, there are different data sources. You have to go to City of LA for certain data. You might be coming to County Open Data Portal. They might be going to LASA and LA County Homelessness Initiative. So there are so many sources where the resident or the third party or the partners or community people have to go. But is there an opportunity for us to aggregate that data and make it easy for the end users? So that's the kind of example of open data vision I was referring. Uh, Alia is asking, are these study results available publicly? That is that service utilization spikes. Yes, that report is actually a public report. So if you actually search for predicting, and I'm happy to paste the link, maybe Subhash, maybe in our later communication, we can send a link. But yes, that's a public report.
Yeah,
Uh,
you can do
as
that.
well as the justice metric framework, which I talked about, the vulnerable population. That report will be published, I would say, in next 2 weeks. When is talking about now in the near future, will the agencies have a role with the data? Where does that question go? Hold on. So when I would say short answer is both. So data has to work hand in hand with the IT. There are business specific roles in the data stream as well as the IT specific roles. The way we are envisioning is that chief data officer has to work hand in hand with the CIO. And the chief data officer is more of a business role where they will be working with the business leaders to understand what are the business strategies and then potentially invoke the research role and data analyst roles. And then they work with the data engineers from the IT stream. And then together they'll come up with the data insights. So short answer is yes, it will involve both of it. And actually, when I talked about the maturity assessment and the roadmap for the departments, that's exactly the roadmap which we help prepare for the departments, that this is your current maturity level and this is how your organization structure should look like. And these are the gaps and the roadmap to fulfill that gap. Hope that gives you some insight. How does the county coordinate and synchronize the use and the display of data with city? I'm just trying to understand. Synchronize the use and display of the data within the city. For example, city as a public. So that is an opportunity area. So fortunately, unfortunately, yes, we are not doing a great job of aggregating the city data, especially on a broader scale. There is an opportunity to aggregate that data. In case of COVID, I think we did a pretty decent job by aggregating that data, especially since it's a county of public health, which works with the city. So it's the county which takes a lead. And we were able to do that aggregation really well. But if you talk about in general, yes, that is an opportunity, and using the data as a utility vision, which I talked about, and how if we can have a common reference architecture, and then the data sharing agreements between the different agencies. Those are the first steps which we are taking. And once we have that, then technology enablement is easy piece. Then it is just about the integrating different sources and platforms to make that happen. But yes, that is a part of a journey, and it's to be honest, it's not happening very well right now on the ground. I was wondering what you are doing and might want to do to attract. Great question. Uh, so honestly, that is the challenge because we are working on way complex problems as compared to the private sector. And the amount of data, the complexity of data which we deal with, that's the heaven for any data background person. But unfortunately, it's the compensation versus the passion and the mission. So we do hire a good people who are mission driven, but when it comes to the compensation, unfortunately, we can't match the private sector or Silicon Valley kind of salaries. So we do try to partner with UCLA, USC, and other schools. We have started the internship programs where we can expose all the problems which I talked about, so that people can start appreciating the kind of complexity. And if people are have really a strong data skill set people, and if they see the complex problem and they get instigated and understand the complexity and the value of it, those are the some of the initiatives which we are making to attract the talent which we are trying to hire. And classification was a big problem. Fortunately, at least we are overcoming that hoop now. Rebecca, in your move to what are the most challenging to overcome in your? So Rebecca, I think you probably already know, but I'll say that if you ask me, it starts with people. And it's not only the data. I would say I've worked through various technology transformation. Technology is always the easiest piece to fix. It is always about a people, top down and down up. How you can first enable the culture and the people, and then once you have that, they will be ready to actually transform the processes, and then technology can be adapted to the processes. So if your question was more about prioritizing between these three, I would always start with the people first. You need to onboard the people and your executive leadership and get their buying, then works towards business process, and then tools will come in place. I know LA County Post open data on its portal. I was wondering how the other way around. That is, are the private vendors providing needed data to the county? Uh, so it's not that straightforward. The private vendors may not be exposing all the data because they also constrained by the privacy laws. So just to give an example of contact tracing, there are various IT solutions available in the market, but why we are not able to leverage those solutions, because at end of the day, it boils down to the privacy and the consent management. Through the phone records as well as through the Google tracking, there are ways to track the contact tracing, but right now we are still dependent upon the individuals to inform us and provide that information, because we have to respect that consent. So yes, in ideal world, yes, private vendors and the public partners, there is a huge opportunity for us to work together, and it's happening on the ground. Yes, but we have to continue expanding onto it. And I'm actually seeing that we are making a positive headways in this area, especially with all the new hirings. We try to bring people from private sector where they can bring a very different perspective and appreciation, and then linking it with the challenges which we are facing and applying a private sector mindset and solutions. So that's where we are trying to bridge the gap between these two different sectors. How private sector and corporations can help fight homelessness? Interesting question. So, so homelessness is I would say, one of the most complex social problem which we face on the ground. And it requires a lot of technology and the processes, definitely funding to fix it. But it is not about just providing the houses to the homelessness. It is about providing the whole life cycle around it, because unless you enable the jobs, the economical aspects of it, and unless you put that person back to the society in a normal way, there's a likelihood that that person will fall back to homelessness again. And how the private partners and the corporations can help is, like small businesses, they can help us enable the jobs and employment for those homelessness people. Like county has incentives for the small businesses. And if we could actually work together and have a right incentive for the corporations when they are hiring a homelessness people, or when they are enabling or developing the workforce, that's where corporations can play a big role. And in return, there can be a right regulation and incentives for these corporations, because it's the I would say it's the reinforcing loop of working with corporations. When they hire, they get incentives, they get motivated to hire more people. And once we enable the monetary and economic aspect to these homeless people, then they are more of self-sufficient. It's not, they're just based on one-time intervention of providing the house. So this might be a short answer I would give. Ashoka, great question. Uh, then Saurabh is asking, are there initiatives geared about newer technology? That's one of my passion area. And yes, apart from my core responsibility, one of my responsibility is to adapt the new technology and make people aware of the emerging technologies. So as I mentioned, I'm a big advocate of AI, ML, as well as RPA solutions on the ground. 2 years back when I joined County, uh, we were not using RPA. And I'm proud to say that, yes, there are several projects, RPA projects, which are going on the ground. And yes, we are appreciative of all the new technologies coming in. And as and when we are modernizing our platforms, uh, it was a mindset shift from on-premises to cloud, but we have way surpassed that challenge. And most of the digital transformation which are happening on the ground, in which we are trying to use SaaS solution as much as possible and moving away from the on-premises custom solutions. Did the county hire CTO to be a peer to GNet City? Uh, that's work in progress. Actually, we were on verge of hiring, but unfortunately the COVID situation happened and then the whole hiring freeze happened. But yes, we do have a chief data officer at the county level, peer to Gene, and that position is open right now. But unfortunately, due to hiring freeze, we are not able to proceed. Hopefully in a couple of months, yes, we would have. Last question, what is the county doing for the food insecurity facing, food security issues facing many people? Not sure if I completely understood if that question is specifically around COVID or a certain segment of people. So there are various initiatives which we have around food, like especially around the elder shelter programs. There is a food delivery programs we have. Then there is a great meal program which we started as a part of COVID situation, where we were able to deliver food and provide food to the needy people, and we partnered with the restaurants uh, in that program. So that's one of the great food program I'm aware, at least in the COVID situation. Anything else? I think I covered.
I think that's good, Jagjeet. We almost at 15 minutes past the hour. Yeah, thank you, Jagjeet. Appreciate you presenting today, and thank you all for attending. Please note that our next webinar is next Thursday. MemSQL is going to talk about what they're doing to flatten the curve. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks, Jagjeet.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks all for showing the interest. It means a lot. Especially, I do want to cultivate that culture so that I could expose the county business problem and opportunities to the private partners and the audiences, so that we can work together uh, towards our region. Because end of the day, LA is our region, and how we can work together to make this as a smart community and a better community, and I would say a resilient community.
Thank you. Bye bye.